Hey, how's it going, guys?
I'm good, Josh.
How are you guys doing?
I'm doing good.
And welcome to everybody who's tuning in for lunch break. It was funny. I was at the church last night, and a young lady said that she's like, "Oh, it was nice having lunch with you the other day." And I'm thinking, and I'm like racking my mind. I was like, "Did we get like some staffing? Did I see her at a lunch place?" And I realized that she was talking about this. And so
you saw my wife yesterday at lunch.
I did. I saw your wife yesterday at lunch at 24th Street Cafe, which is an amazing place. They built a nice outdoor patio now, and so it's nice. It's really nice.
I've seen it. It looks really legit.
I don't know. I don't think people know. I don't think they realize that they're open.
I think they're doing downtown. I think it's kind of making like a little place where they're closing down streets.
They poured money into it, Tom. It was like it's like a full-on permanent change there. I was thinking, man, I wonder how many restaurants are thinking this way. The things have changed forever.
Ever,
right?
Josh. Ever. We're not going back.
There's never going to be what it was before. There'll be a new normal, right?
It'll be a hybrid, don't you think?
Definitely, and it was interesting. It's interesting to me to hear the difference of opinions even now. And there's a lot of people that are still really worried about COVID, and then there's other people that aren't worried at all. And there's some people that are like mask. There's other people that don't ever wear masks. So. Interesting topic. We're not going to talk about all that today. No. We're going to get into some interesting things that have been going on with you, Pastor Tom.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about you for a second. Before I do that, I want a couple of quick announcements. One is if you guys have any questions, you can go ahead and ask those questions on Facebook on the feed in the comment section, and we will try to answer those questions here at the end, especially for Pastor Tom. He's been around for a long time. He's had a lot of experiences that we'll talk about here in a second. So if you have any questions for him or for us, please ask those questions, and we'll try to get to them. Also, for all of you men out there that are attending VBF in Bakersfield here or are close within the vicinity, if you want to come to a dinner on Sunday night, we're starting a new thing. We're bringing this Mighty Men thing back where it's groups of men who are serving and living life together. So if that's something you are interested in, even to hear about kind of what the plan is, that's going to be Sunday night at 6 o'clock at VBF on the front lawn. We're going to be having food. Safely served, of course, for those of you that are concerned. But it's going to be a good time, and I'm excited about it. My dad, Pastor Ron's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Tom's going to be there. So it's going to be really fun, and we're also going to kind of group up and we're going to commit to some real fellowship.
If you want to go deeper in relationships, this is probably for you.
Definitely. So there's that. But Tom, let's talk about you. We don't have a whole lot of time. I was thinking about how we could probably do a 2-hour session, Tom, you and I, and Vince, for every single day of the week because you have so many stories. But,
he does.
Listen. All I'm going to say, and I don't want to embarrass Tom, but whatever you do, don't Google Tom Touchstone 1985 bodybuilder. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
You've been told.
Yeah, now everybody's going to do it. So anyway, so Tom was Mr. America, right?
Yeah, California.
Mr. California.
Competed in the America many times.
But you competed in Mr. America, which
runner-up
is
in USA.
a big deal.
A lot of different things. It's just different life.
You were He-Man at one point.
I worked for Mattel for about 3 years.
I love those stories.
Traveling the United States and representing a fictional comic book character, He-Man.
And Tom, I don't want to embarrass you, but what's your age? Because
I'm 62,
and he's still ripped. And so this is amazing to me that Tom is still in great shape. You've had some health issues lately. We want to talk about that in a second. But when I met Tom, he looked freaky. He was freaky looking. And
you were 14.
I was a young kid, and he was helping me with a weight program. And you helped me get in shape. You taught me how to exercise to where I could run faster and be stronger. And so
play football better. And you did. And you actually accomplished so much.
I really did.
In the gym.
So I don't know if I've ever really thanked you for it, but thank you.
Well, you're
appreciate
welcome.
that.
Well, you've got your dad's genetics. Your dad's got some big arms.
The problem is I have to put it into practice, Tom.
You do.
And that's the struggle these days.
Isn't that the same thing spiritually and physically thinking?
It is.
You got to
really
use it. You don't use it, you lose it.
It really is. So tell us first, before we start, with what you're going through in life, because this is a really good story, and he's in the middle of it right now. Go ahead and tell us about your family.
My wife, Tiffany, she's an educator, and she's teaching 2nd grade now. She's been a principal for a long time at our private school, and now she's at Elk Hills Schools and doing well. I have a daughter, Taylor. She's 24. She's in Irvine. She plays tennis. She played Division II tennis and was the captain of their tennis team, and then went on to help administrate with the team, and she got her master's. And my daughter Tessa is in Thousand Oaks, going to Cal Lutheran. She is currently finishing up her bachelor's and going to do her master's too.
Is it okay to say who she works for?
You could if you want to.
So, she works for Ben Shapiro, who a lot of you guys know of, and she got connected through some mutual friends, but really, really bright kids, and really successful in a lot of ways, and I know that has a lot to do with parenting. So Tom, when we talk about your life, you've been through many chapters. You started off young as a bodybuilder. You moved to LA. I know these stories, and I don't want to feed you too much on that. But then you became a pastor at one point. Well, you worked in the corporate world before that. And then you became a pastor. You feel like God called you into the ministry. You want to tell us give us a quick rundown on what
all that?
Just what was the deciding factor of saying, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a pastor.
Well, I think it starts back when I was young. I moved to LA when I was 18, 1976. And I started there really young. I walked into the second, which was one of the original Gold's Gym while they're filming Pumping Iron. So, I mean, Pumping Iron wasn't even out. Arnold wasn't famous, and it was just.
And you have stories of hanging out with Arnold.
They're just gym stories.
That's so crazy.
So wild.
Me and Arnold were just working out.
Yeah.
But the whole thing was, as I was young, I felt there was something more. I really did. My brother and I and my family weren't raised in church or anything connected, and so when I was down there, I got an education. Got an education in computer science, programming and analysis and operations, and so there got to be a point, I think, in anybody's life that you get, you're like, hey, I was in bodybuilding for 10 years.
Yeah. So
I retired when I was 28, 1987. And
the idea of you going from a bodybuilder to a computer programmer is a mind blow to me. Well, I can see like this big buff guy just sitting there on the computer, just handling.
I always tell people that I'm a nerd on the inside,
right,
and I'm a jock on the outside.
That's funny.
But I was told that nerd isn't the right word anymore. It's a geek.
Geek, okay, and that's a good word.
I imagine like you're calling your company computer guy, right? And Tom shows up all ripped, and he's like, "What's the problem?"
Because you're expecting,
you're expecting
the
like
pocket
the little
protector,
pocket guy,
and the guy that's like got his shoulders.
He's like, "I'll fix it." Just starts smashing stuff.
Well, but people's attitude was quite different toward you.
So I really I enjoyed the corporate world. I really did, but in the midst of it, and this I say this a lot, Josh. I knew my life was off track. Was screwed up.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know how to get it back on track, or didn't know how to get it unscrewed up. And I'll remember that one night that my friend John Haddad and I were sitting at his house, because I moved. We lived together while I was getting a house built here in town, and I just had this desire to go to church. It was just out of the blue. It wasn't like I had planned on it, because I didn't go to church. And so we went to two churches, and then we decided to go out to East Brundage Lane. And it was kind of crazy, because I remember sitting there, and I'll never forget those words. I mean, for the first two times I was there, I just wanted to raise my hand, get saved. I did that. I mean, honestly, it was it, but it was pride. I was there with my buddies and didn't want to do that. So that third time, I was there by myself. And it was, I just was there, and it was like that. It was like that horse wanting to come out of the gate. Just get to the raising the hand thing. Just, who wants Jesus, raise your hand. That's what I wanted to get to. When your dad did that, man, my hand shot up like that. And it was crazy, because that's one of those times, and a lot of us know that if we go to Valley Bible, sometimes your dad will go, "That's not good enough." I was like, "What? I just did what you."
He upped the ante.
Yeah, and so he says, "If you're really serious, you got to walk down here." And there was a thing in my heart was like, "No, I don't want to get up." I mean, God saw my hand, but I did. I did. So when I got saved, man, I just dove in, because I met Doug Lohman. Doug grabbed onto me right away and did something that I'm still doing to this day, sitting down with people, having coffee, having tea with them, just doing something just to get relational in your life. And I'll never forget, there was a time that your dad even asked me, and God had been working on my heart, if I ever thought about the ministry. I was like, no, and I had a couple scriptural things a little messed up, and so he helped me with that. And then it just kept getting stronger, Josh. And I remember that night, And my wife and I had a couple confirmations that were crazy as far as me going into the ministry. And I was sitting there, and I had filled out my resignation letter. And I was like, gosh, God, I'd like something more. Ever been there? I want something more. So, you guys know what the flop and drop is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you open the Bible and do this.
Oh, right.
Okay, yeah.
And so I did. And I got a pretty profound scripture.
Something we don't highly recommend,
we
but
don't.
sometimes
we don't.
Sometimes it works.
You've done that. I'd already thrown up twice.
Yeah.
And I was just like, and this is a big move.
Right.
And I'll read the scripture, and I got it here. It's in Mark 10:29-30. Now, can you imagine this, Josh? It's in today's devotions.
Wow.
Isn't
Really?
that great? Yes.
That
It's
is
in today's
crazy.
devotions.
That is crazy.
And
Wow.
it says, Jesus said, truly I say to you, there is no one who has left houses or brothers or sisters or mothers or fathers or children or farms. I work for an international farming corporation. For my sake and for the gospel's sake, but that he will receive 100 times as much now in the present age, houses and brothers and sisters and fathers and children and farms, along with persecutions, and in the age to come, eternal life.
Wow.
It was in today's devotion.
That's awesome.
Yes,
That's wild.
it is.
Yeah, that's really wild.
And so at that point, I'm like, I'm going to do it. and I turned in my resignation, and they offered me some more money and stuff. But I just told them, I go, you understand, I've sold out for Christ.
Yeah.
And God's like now moving, and I got to move with him.
And since then, I can speak from what I've seen in you, because I've known you since then, is I've seen you take that discipline, which I kind of understood, at least from from watching from the outside. You taking that discipline from all the work you did before with bodybuilding, with the corporate world, and you put that into ministry. And I've seen you almost I don't even know what the right word is, but I've just seen you put so much time and effort into people. You took it. You were, before it was your body. Before it was corporation. It was focusing on business. Then it was people. And I've seen you do that day in, day out. And you've connected with countless people. It's funny, if you go to lunch with Tom, he will run into 5 or 6 people every single time that you go to lunch with him, because he knows so many people, because he's so relational, and you wouldn't even know it. It's just funny how everyone knows, a lot of people know who you are, and a lot of people would consider you a friend because you take the time to listen and you take the time to talk to people. And so I've seen a lot. I've seen God do a lot in your life, and I've seen a lot of people don't realize also that Tom's other role is he's a firefighter. Not an actual firefighter, but a spiritual firefighter. He's constantly putting out spiritual fires, and constantly, how many days go by, you get a lot of problems thrown your way. You get a lot of issues thrown your way. And I'm guessing not many days go by where it's just peace and just quiet, right? But that's okay, because I think that God has put you in that position. But recently you've gone through kind of a health scare. Can you share with us about that? Because you've always been consistent, Tom. You've always been strong, but lately I've seen you go through a struggle, and I think it's important for us to talk about that.
Well, I don't know if you've ever had a challenge, and I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
It was 6 weeks ago, this last Tuesday, I was driving down for my annual physical at Cedars-Sinai. And when I hit the top of the grapevine, my heart just started picking up. No precursors, no nothing. And I was like in trouble. And I made the decision to continue on, so I drove an hour and a half. Well, when I got to my doctor's office, they could tell that I was in crisis. And my pulse was 200 over 100. So it's all of a sudden kind of a cardiac crisis. So I ended up having a physical, then I ended up having a echocardiogram, saw a cardiologist, and since then, I've just been on this journey. They discovered I have what's called an MVP, which is a mitral valve prolapse. And it's genetic. My brother has it. My dad had it. And so it's really just put a big hold on a lot of things I love to do. I will never, ever be able to lift heavy, and I love to lift weights. But I think there was a lot of things in this that I was very fortunate. I was going down to Cedars to see my doctor. Since then, I'm on a heart medication. That's its job is to slow my heart down, which has been hard because I've always tried to speed it up and make it strong. And so it's just something that's tough to get used to. And one of the biggest shakes to me was I kind of lost a little bit of confidence. and I've never had that before. And so all these things are new adjustments. But I've come back to a decision that, God's not done with me. And as I go forward, as we've always talked about, I'm going to be able to minister to people better because of what I'm going through.
Sure. Yeah.
And I've changed my diet. I mean, just everything has just changed, Josh.
The worst thing that I think you had to go through, in my opinion, this is purely my opinion, but giving up caffeine would be a very difficult thing for me to do.
I kicked that cold turkey, and a lot of people said that wasn't a great idea, but
right.
I did. I mean, I think that's where I get back to that a very determined attitude. I want to be able to, take part.
One of the things you've shared with me before, and I will share this back with you, is the Serenity Prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Amen.
And I've taken that as well as part of my, repertoire of how to handle situations. Because how many times do things happen to us? And we're like, okay, I can do this, but I can't do anything about that. So I'm going to focus on this right now. And that's where your mind should be, and I know that when something like this happens, that our time and efforts are limited. And so all of a sudden, you had a lot of energy and you had a lot of time and you had a lot of things going on, but now I know you check out earlier in the day and there's, you're limited. But where God shines, I think, is when we are limited. He fills the gaps. He fills the holes. And it's been amazing for me to see that happen in the church and with all the leaders. And it stinks to see you guys having to go through this stuff. I'm Pastor Hector, going through a huge trial. My dad's constantly going through trials. The devil is trying hard, but ultimately he's covering us.
He is. And the what I feel is the benefit is the fact how close I've gotten to the Lord over the last 6 weeks. There again, you think, hey, I've got this super tight relationship, and all of a sudden you go through something that just shakes your world, and you do. I mean, first 2 weeks, and I think I've shared that with Foy, I didn't sleep a whole lot. It was just that whole process. And I had a lot of time to put into, what do they say? That, sometimes you have to take your own counsel.
Right.
The word, worship music, praise. I mean, just all that. I just recently switched over to praising God in my trial, thanking Him for a damaged prolapsed mitral valve and high blood pressure. Because there's a book called Power of Praise by Marion Crothers. And it's saying, God, thank you for changing me through this process, because it changed my attitude.
The Power of Praise by Marion Carruthers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a book. And
check that out.
Yeah, it's
probably
a great
find it
book
on Amazon, I'm guessing.
because it says that we're supposed to thank God for things, right?
Well, that's scriptural. We talked about James 1 earlier in the week, and count it all joy when you encounter various trials. There's all kinds of different trials. There's something new every day. It was funny last night. I was telling you that I might have a termite problem in my house. I definitely have a termite problem in my house. I saw them crawling around, and I was stressed out. Stressed out of my mind. And I'm talking to you, and God just reminded me of the perspective, because you're going through a health thing, and I'm like, that's a bigger deal. And so it ministered to me in a way of just saying, it could be different. It could be different. It could be worse. And I think no matter what we're going through, it could be worse. There are people in Africa right now. Dr. Nalos was showing me pictures of the people that are connected with our church that we minister to that are being attacked and abused every single day by certain Muslim groups. And they're literally physically beating them and attacking them because they're Christians. And so there's always somebody else who has another story. One of the things I wrote down, Tom, I'm studying for this week. I'm going to be preaching on Sunday. But one of the PowerPoint ideas that I have right now is, to experience God, you must be willing to be changed.
Amen.
And I think that so many people come to me or come to you, ask us, how can I experience more of God? How can I want to experience God. I want to be connected. I want to hear God. Well, you have to ask yourself, are you willing to be changed? Yeah. Because when you encounter God, you are changed. You are. And I've got a bunch of biblical examples that I'm going to bring on Sunday to talk about that, about how He never leaves us the same. Oh, no. And there's a humility in being okay with that.
Yes. Right?
Like there's a humility in saying, this is who I am, but I'm willing to be changed.
There was a point, Josh, I wasn't sure I was ever going to be able to exercise again. Really. And I gave that up. I
And that's
said,
a
"God,
huge part of that's been a huge part of your
It's
identity.
just part of who I am,
Yeah.
and they want you to, with heart issues, to be able to exercise. And with this valve problem, is it just sticks open sometimes, and so they just didn't want a lot of pressure being put back on it. But you know what's so cool is to see the people that you've put into all these years put back in.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, it was amazing. I mean, and this is what I tell people all the time, that your marriage is worth it. Tiff and I have been married, I think, 26 years this year. And, it's funny because my wife's a little tough on me. Because one morning I woke up and all of a sudden I started seeing Bible scripture posted on the mirror. And it was posted on the blood pressure machine. It was posted on my book. But she basically came and says, I want you to read these scriptures out loud every time you see them. And every time you're in a room. And there's every room I go into, there's scripture. But it was just crazy.
That's awesome.
That she just really stepped up and just into that role. And it's always been me. And
Right.
that's humbling too,
Right.
to allow somebody else to come in and be that strength for you.
Well, it's funny how we have this perception when we're young of what marriage should be.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't match that expectation, it's like we get frustrated and we want to kind of give up, And I was just talking to a young guy about this exact thing. And I was saying, nobody has an ideal marriage.
No.
But it's just like our connection with God. Marriage changes you. And it makes you into the person that you're supposed to be. It brings the character out that it's supposed to be brought out. And that's a beautiful thing. God brings us our wives and brings us our friends and brings us our church. And ultimately, he's moving through all of those people to help us be humbled and help us to be better versions of ourselves, I think. I really do.
Great.
And the best version of ourselves is somebody who's relying on God and showing God through.
It's so crazy, Josh, because sometimes you always teach people, and I think that's something your dad, Pastor Ron, does really well, how to hear God's voice. And I started recording things that I'd ask God for, and I took them down. I always tell people that I think you should journal things, and I got a whole thing full of it. But this is the very first thing that I saw the day after I came home. It says, God is the one who heals. And it says, I am a God who heals, and I heal hurt bodies, troubled minds, aching hearts, messed up lives, and difficult relationships. It was just in a little book I was reading. And all of a sudden, I thought, I'm on a trail. I'm hearing God. I will get through this, and I am going to be changed, and I'm going to be okay with that.
Yeah. Definitely. And you have to be okay with it.
I like that you guys mentioned change, because that change is difficult, right? But it's even more difficult when you're not expecting to have to change, right? And I think that I think a lot of people struggle with that idea. Like I think people want to change slowly. Like I know I want to work out more this year, and it's in my hands right now. Unless a health problem happens, and then I'm like, I got to do something, right? But it's that change, I think, that keeps us from, or the idea of change or doing something different, whether it's frightening or it's unknown. It kind of paralyzes us in some sense, wouldn't you say?
Well, some people have said, well, what if you wouldn't have went to LA that day? I go, I think I'm kind of fortunate that they found that I had a mitral valve prolapse.
Very much, yeah.
I thought so. I mean, you can't change that, and so I was fortunate to be at a great place that if they needed to treat me more, they would have. And it was humbling then too, because they wouldn't let me go home by myself. So my wife had to come down and get me and drive me home, and my daughter and her boyfriend Danny came down. So it started right then and there that day, letting other people help you. And I think as men, we're self-reliant, and you'll learn that God has put people in your life just to be there for you.
Absolutely.
And you have to receive that help too.
You do. That's the thing. I mean, it's a lot of people get into this mindset where they're used to giving all the time, and like that becomes their comfort zone. And when God might be saying to some of you guys, hey, if you want to grow, learn to receive.
Yes.
Learn to rely on me through the people that I put in your life. I think we forget to realize that God brings certain people into our lives for certain times in our lives, and as certain roles, that they, different people speak to me differently. And I know that I'm going to get certain things from this person or that person. So if I'm going through something and I don't want to hear those things, I'll try to avoid those people, But you know that God has brought them into your life, and you're like, okay, it's not always comfortable.
No.
having relationships with people. It's not always comfortable coming to God in the mornings. And I know that you have been really big on devotions every single day and praying and falling on your face. And that's not always a comfortable, natural thing to do, right? It's not, but you do it knowing that it's going to make a difference.
Yes.
And so,
and when you see it make that difference, and sometimes it might be the littlest change.
yeah,
Just one little thing changing. It just, you have to. And one thing I tell people, if you find yourself in a position like myself, where you're uncomfortable, maybe it's not yourself anymore, you have to push yourself. I told you that last night.
Yeah.
Even being here, you've got to push myself to do things because they're not the same anymore.
Right.
Before, 2 months ago, there was things that were just second nature to me, but they aren't as second nature to me anymore. They just aren't.
What do you think God's doing in the church right now? What do you think that?
I think God has taken this time, and I thank God for you and Vince and Cohen and Justin and Seth and just all the people, because you guys have got us so far ahead with this technology. Because I tell people that our tech group, Josh and Vince and all the group, that they were poised, ready for this online church, even before we were thinking, hey, it's a big deal. But I do think the church has changed. I think church attendance has changed. Hopefully everybody will come back.
Yeah.
But I do think right now we're catering to the online audience and to some people that will want to come
Well,
back.
it's, the video, the podcasting, all this stuff is like a medium, and it's a popular medium right now because it's easy to consume. It's easy to stay connected. And so I've, felt for a long time that we needed to do this for a time like this. And I didn't know this was going to happen, obviously. But just like Joseph, he knew there was a famine coming. He didn't know how it was going to come exactly. He stored up grain in the silos. And so to me, this is we're always looking ahead, but we're also focusing on now and what God has put in our hearts now, even if it doesn't make sense. A year ago, around this time, God was speaking to me very clearly, kept telling me it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And it was okay when God was telling me that it was going to be okay, which made me a little nervous because I'm like, what does this mean? Yeah. Things are fine right now, God. Why are you telling me that it's going to be okay? Little did I know that we were going into the most challenging season of all of our lives.
I'm 62 and I've never seen any time like it, Josh.
Yeah, it's wild. It really is. But God is still good.
Oh, he is.
The church is still the church. We're going to still stay focused on what we need to stay focused on. And God's been faithful. He's shown up at every corner.
Every corner. When you talk about every corner, when I was down in my doctor's office and they wanted to do a lot of blood work, and there was this guy, and I shared this on my devotional, I think, a couple weeks ago. There was the tech guy is taking my blood. And so he was there, and he was just, of course he was trying to make me feel comfortable. So he just asked about me. He just asked, so what do you do? So, well, I'm a pastor. And he goes, well, you always been a pastor? And I said, no, I wasn't. I used to live here in LA, and gave him a little bit of the backdrop. And so as he was taking my blood, he asked me a question. He says, so do you believe that somebody who has accepted Christ into their heart and is a believer can still sin? I looked at him and I go, absolutely. You're looking at one right here.
Right.
And I says, but, we can't stay in that. And it was funny because I was sitting there as he's drawing my blood going, really? But God was taking advantage of it. So after he finished, he goes, you know what? I really appreciate it. I thank you for that. Then he let me pray with him.
That's crazy.
In the midst of my crisis, and I think, God, this is pretty ironic, that you still give us opportunities right when we're going through a crisis.
It's funny because we work at a church and we literally have office hours. And I was talking to the guys the other day. I was like, it's easy for us to have this clock in, clock out mentality, even with like our spirituality and Christian. But we don't do that. But it's one of those things that's like tempting to say, well, I'm off the clock right now. I'm not going to deal with that. But God's like, come on, you're always on the clock with me. You're always moving forward. And I think even Christians, sometimes we have that attitude of like, it's Sunday morning. I'm going to be a good Christian on Sunday morning, but later on, I'm going to do my own thing. And what if God tells you to do something different? You know, what if God has a different plan for you? I know, Vince, you had to miss game 1 of the NBA finals last night because you were doing ministry.
I was at work, yeah.
But you know what?
It's all right.
That's awesome.
And the Lakers won, so I'm good for it.
They won by a margin. So.
Yeah.
Sports are so weird right now. It's so strange. It's so weird that the NBA playoffs are happening at the same time as MLB playoffs.
And Stanley Cup.
And the Stanley Cup just finished.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
And
so
football.
Strange.
There's too many sports right now.
It
went from 0 to 100.
From 0 to too much.
Yeah. I will say I like what you just said, Tom, because you talked about even in your trial, even the thing you're going through, God was still having you fulfill the purpose that He's put on this planet. I like that because we've been talking about purpose. Last week we talked about purpose. Last night, Pastor Ron talked about the parable of talents. I think when we go through these hard times, if you don't have purpose, if you don't have something that's bigger than you, it's a lot easier to lose sight of what's important, right?
Yeah.
It's really easy to lose sight of what God has for you. And that's where depression kicks in. Not that you won't get depressed as a Christian, I'm just saying that's where depression can really overtake you. That's where you can have suicidal thoughts when you don't have a bigger thing to live for. A lot of us, we have families, so as men, we live for our families first. But even beyond family, it has to be bigger than that, right? It has to be God. And so if you don't have a good purpose, a good foundation in that, then it's when these things do come your way, it's not easy to change because you're like, what do I do now, God? Like, well, I'm stuck. This is what you left me with, and then you can't move, you can't change because you don't see the other side of it, right?
You know, and I think that starts, Vince, and you guys know me. I mean, once I got saved, the Word became everything to me, and I've got really 2 life verses. My favorite life verse is Matthew 6:33. Seek ye first God's kingdom and His righteousness, which means His right ways, and then He's going to take care of the rest. And that's been such a passion of all my life. I've put it into place now. I mean, you know, I'm really passionate about not missing something. All my virtual man caves, my devotions, you know, just, you know, saying I'm going to see God's kingdom first because I believe in this stuff. Like you said, purpose.
Yeah.
And I keep putting it in purpose. And I have Jeremiah 29:11, which says, God says, I know the plans I have for you. One of welfare, not calamity. And I've got to believe that too.
Right.
So I believe I will come out of this. I'll be different, but I'm still going to be effective in His kingdom.
A lot of people, I think, believe that you need perfection before you have involvement, or they you know, but God doesn't require perfection. No. He requires attendance. He requires showing up in the morning and saying, hey, God, what do you have for me? And coming to church and saying, hey, God, what do you have for me? You know, if there were only perfect people at church, we would be a pretty boring church, and it wouldn't be what it could be, you know, which it's kind of like a workshop. Like, I always think of church as like a garage or a gym. You don't go to the gym because you're in shape already. You go to the gym because you need to work on yourself. And I think that if we see church like that, it's like a gym. We see fellowship like that, it's like working out your spiritual side. It's going to last
so true,
forever.
Josh.
That's the only thing that will last. I mean,
when people used to come to me and talk about, you know, being in the gym or what exercise what I do or how to do it, I said there's a real simple thing. I go, if you go into the gym, you're going to learn more with your eyes and ears than you are with your mouth. Just keep your mouth shut and look, hear, and duplicate it. I think spirituality has that same type of.
So there's a thing that I learned from you in the gym, Tom, and it was you're hardcore about what you bite off, you have to chew. Yeah. So you'd always say, hey, if you're going to put that weight on there,
do it.
Young man, you know, if you're going to be prideful, put that weight on there. You got to do it. Dang. You can't put that weight on and then say, no, go down. You know, you have to do it. And I think that's beautiful because that's what ministry is to me. It's constantly, we have this saying around VBF, like throw your hat over the fence. Yeah. It's commit before you're sure of yourself. Commit before you know you can do it. And then you'll be shocked at how far you can get in life. And I think that God honors that too. I really do.
I challenging yourself.
Yeah. Do we have any questions? I don't want to.
We do.
Miss any of those.
There's one. I'm going to paraphrase it.
Okay.
And it was at Tom. They said basically going back. So they're going back to like you came out of the world, and I'm sure your friends that were in the world, your family members are like, wait, you can't be a Christian. You have a bunch of junk with you. You have a bunch of garbage. So Kay says, what do I do besides praying? What can I do when, even though I've changed, even though I pray and I'm devoted to God every day, my family members, people in my past are throwing my past in my face. Like, they're basically bringing it back around saying, hey, you can't really be this changed person. There's no way.
Her name's Kay?
Kay, yeah.
Kay, I can tell you, the day I got saved, I drove home, and I grew up over off of Union Avenue and Pacheco. And I drove home, and I was in the kitchen. My mom and dad were there, and I was making some food at my mom's house. And my mom just looked at me, and she goes, Tom, there's something different. And I said, well, I got saved today. My dad walked out of the room. Then after that, my dad started to ridicule me. And then it was funny, when my oldest daughter was born, I really felt, and it was true, I had a vision of her before we were pregnant, and before Tiff and I were married. A friend of mine, Raul Castaneda, remember Raul Castaneda?
Yeah.
Was with me. We were going to Promise Keepers. And I had this just kind of a vision of a girl. So when my dad would come to a baby shower, he'd bring something blue. And it became this big beef. So much so that my wife, when we were going to probably the last baby shower, she goes, can you just cool it with your dad? I mean, you just do it. I go, no, I can't. And so my dad did. I go, if that's blue, just keep it. And he goes, Tom, you're going to look foolish, so is your God, when this is a boy. And when my oldest daughter, Taylor, was born, she was a girl. So I never knew how much that impacted my dad until I led my dad to the Lord. And my dad said so much, I stood so hard on that fact. Once it was a girl, he said, there has to be something to us. My dad never believed. I got to lead him to the Lord probably 9 or 10 years later. I had friends that would leave me out now because I would tell them, I go, hey, I heard you guys went out last night. And they go, yeah. I go, why didn't you call us? They go, well, you guys don't want to do what we do. And I go, well, could we just do something kind of in the middle?
Yeah.
I'm the same guy.
Right.
So what I see, and it's so much through the years, is you got to hold your course, Kay. You just got to hold your course. And then you're going to, through what you're experiencing, be able to influence these other ones. I tell people about the first Bible study I ever had. I had a Bible study after I'd been going to the church, and Pastor Ron and Doug thought I should do a Bible study, and I did. So I advertised in the church bulletin. And first Thursday night, no one showed up. So Pastor Ron was kind of bummed out because I made cookies too.
Right.
I read all the small group books, make cookies and all that. And so I ate them myself. And so I had it the next week, advertised in the church bulletin. We had an announcement. No one showed up. So the third time, Pastor Ron was like, maybe you're fishing in the wrong fishing hole. And so I remember going to the gym, and one of the guys said, Tom, what are you doing at your house on Thursday night? I heard you're doing something. I go, I'm having a Bible study. He goes, can I come? I go, well, I was looking for Christians, not gym knuckleheads. And I go, sure. And so that Bible study got so out of hand. I just did a funeral for a friend of mine who died of COVID. His name is Jerry Calhoun. And we probably had 3 or 4 fist fights a month. He broke my plane glass window twice and made him fix it. But and I shared that at his funeral today. But we had so much just freshness, because these guys, we didn't know about Jesus.
Yeah.
We were just learning. We're all coming to VBF, your dad just to talk about us. And as we came, it was so exciting just to fall in love with Jesus with a bunch of guys that I was like, kind of like, nah, I'm going to X you guys out too. So you can have a hard time. You got to include those people. But I tell you, the stuff you're going through is going to influence that group. So
it's funny. There's a coming of age, that happens naturally for young men, young women. But then there's also like a spiritual coming of age in a way. When you first become a Christian, like you go kind of nuts, you go crazy. You kind of you
buy the T-shirts.
Yeah, you buy the T-shirts.
you
don't talk to any old friends or anything. But then you go through a state where you get really close to God, and then you later on down the road you become more mature to where you need to be back around people that are first coming into the light, that are first getting to meet the Lord. And for those of us that can handle being around people that, do all the bad things, I don't know how to, the real sinners, right? Those who smoke, cuss, and chew, and those who do, that was the old saying. Like, if you can handle being around those people, be around those people. They need God. Don't be afraid. Don't be intimidated if you can handle it. Now, there are immature people that can't handle it. I understand that. But if you can handle being around your old friends, go talk to them, be around them. You know?
I see this in this new trial that I am. Obviously, I've lost some body weight, and I saw somebody that used to know me, and they go, man, Tom, what happened? I go, man, I got an issue now. They go, how are you going to deal with not lifting? I go, lifting's not my life. It's so funny how people stereotype you or put you into that box.
Yep. Yeah.
I was like, I have a wonderful life without in it. I mean, I had a great run and enjoyed it, but if I can't ever lift again.
And that's biblical, not to allow things that identify you to take over your life. I think it's okay to have those things. Vince and I like to ride motorcycles, but that's not our life. No. We like to shoot videos. That's not our life. our life is this deeper calling that we're called to, and our families, of course.
So it kind of made me excited that God can use me in this new phase, because I got a call from a friend of mine who goes to our church, and he says, "I didn't know you had problems." And he goes, like, he ran into that guy.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, it gives us a chance now to minister to other people, should they not be able to do something that they've always loved.
Well, Tom, I hate seeing you go through this trial. I really do. But it's encouraging to me to see you go through this trial, because you're going through it. You are, and I can already see you coming out of the other side, and there's a light, and there's hope, and things get difficult. They just do. And when I think of Job, everything was taken from him. The last thing that was taken from him is his health. And when you don't have that, you do feel like something's missing. And if God can be that, fill that void for you, then he can do that for anybody else that's listening or watching. And so I appreciate you sharing that, Tom. Please keep him in prayer.
Thank you.
Health is not 100%, but that's okay. We're going to move on. We're going to move forward. And we got a lot of work to do at VBF and in the community that we have here. And so hopefully we can see some of you men on Sunday nights. Ladies, encourage your husbands to come out. And we love you guys. I think we got to wrap up because we have a staff meeting here in a few. But hopefully you guys had a good lunch, and we will see you guys soon. All right. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Vince.
Yeah, thank you.